Staying on the continent's politics, the dethroning of the Botswana Democratic Party from power after 58 years in office has raised questions over liberation movements and their relevance in Southern Africa.
There is a rejection of the liberation movements in Southern Africa by a spirited young demographic. I'm looking at Southern Africa in particular. The liberation movements are in big trouble. These political parties are the ones who liberated Africa from colonialism. Some of these key liberation parties include the African National Congress in South Africa, Southwestern African People's Organization in Namibia, SWAPO, UNIP in Zambia, the ZANU-PF in Zimbabwe, the Malawi Congress Party, MCP in Malawi, FRELIMO in Mozambique, the Botswana Democratic Party in Botswana. These political parties have one thing in common. They have had a stranglehold on the people of Southern Africa, but now they are fading away slowly, one by one, as the African youth are starting to dictate the voting patterns. They are starting to throw their weight around. So you are seeing this shift on the political scene.
Look, the election results in Botswana, they represent a consequential moment. We are clearly seeing a wave in Southern Africa of democracies turning their back against the ruling parties of old. And Botswana's election results represent such a moment where the Botswana people have really decided that after years of the ruling party being in control, and yet the lived experience of the people having deteriorated over the years, that it was clearly a time for change.
So as they say, the proof is in the pudding. The latest elections in Botswana have sent shock waves across the continent. 58 years of the BDP in Botswana came to a crashing end when the Umbrella for Democratic Change, an alliance of opposition parties led by now President of Botswana, Duma Boko, a lawyer, won by a landslide to oust Masisi and the BDP. It was goodbye Masisi, goodbye BDP. The Botswana have had enough. But the question is, will this trend continue in Southern Africa? Most likely, yes.
Young people are going to determine the future trajectory of each of their countries, whether we think of Botswana, South Africa, Mozambique. The problem we have here is that the political leadership tends to be of an older generation where there is a disconnect between the interests and the aspirations of young people, as well as the interests and the aspirations as interpreted by that leadership. And so the election of the new, president of Botswana, who happens to be 54 years of age, is very interesting because we are starting to see this generational move happening in the African continent.
These liberation movements have fallen prey to corruption, cronyism, and the disgruntled population are hungry for change. There is the preservation of privilege. Means when you get a high position in that government, your children or their relatives, they will all do well. Nepotism. So these days they call them Nepo babies. So now, with the average voters in Africa around 19 years of age, Africa is a very young continent, the youngest continent on earth. Indeed, with the majority average age of the continent at 19, that's a very young population. Now, these are just starting to vote. They are looking for jobs. They're looking for opportunities. Technology is moving so fast. They want to catch up. So then there is this disconnect among the young voters and the older generation, which is now starting to show through these elections. They simply don't relate to these liberation movements' ideology. Now they've had enough of the historical nostalgia. It comes a point where it's nice to know, but it's not really relevant to our situation today. We want jobs, right? The youth are looking for jobs. Other continents are advancing in technology every day, but you're still telling us how you liberated the country.
Do you have a vision and a plan for the people of your country, particularly for young people, that they can aspire to remain and build rather than go overseas, for example, and try their life overseas? And so the key thing for African leaders currently is, what is the vision and policies that we are producing that will ensure that we retain talent of young people within our countries, that we are not seeing almost what we had in South Africa called the wasted years?
So this year and next year is very busy for the Southern African part of the continent, because it started in May with the African National Congress, the oldest liberation movement in Africa, losing its majority for the first time, therefore unable to form a government on their own. They've had to go to another political party, the DA, so that they come together and form what they're calling a government of national unity. And it has changed the landscape of politics in South Africa. And this change is we're going to see more and more of this. In South Africa, the likely situation is that more and more political parties will gain prominence and get quite a number of members of parliament. So you are going to have many political parties that then the majority will be required to form these alliances or coalitions in order to make up the numbers to rule the country. I think gone are the days where ANC dominated the political landscape. That's not going to happen. I doubt that's going to happen again.
They say the recent presidential and parliamentary elections were rigged. The Electoral Commission says the ruling Frelimo party won. Now, supporters of opposition leader Venancio Mondlane have followed his call for a week-long strike. Police aren't taking any chances. At least 11 people were killed when they used tear gas and gunfire to break up protests last week.
These are not police, they are Frelimo. If Frelimo really won, why don't they come out to celebrate? Where did they really win?
The opposition have numbers. The police have weapons. The army's also been deployed in the city centre. Almost all businesses have closed. 7 days without trade will hurt the economy and the 2/3 of Mozambicans who live on less than $2 a day. Striking is a struggle. But there's widespread anger among many young people who feel they have no future while Frelimo's elite grows richer.
So we have seen the post-electoral violence in Mozambique as the young people protest the latest October 19 elections, in which the liberation movement, another one, Frelimo, that is a Portuguese acronym, but in English it is translated as Mozambique Liberation Front. Now, Frelimo has ruled Mozambique since 1975, of course. After independence, there was the deadly Mozambican civil war, where Frelimo fought Mozambique National Resistance, Renamo, which was supported by the West, through their proxies. I think we had Ian Smith supported them. Malawi did support Renamo. South Africa supported Renamo. There was a whole mess there. Now, Daniel Chapo, a former disc jockey of Frelimo, won by a huge margin, as I said. Now, the opposition, Podemos, they have rejected the elections. They're saying that it was rigged, lots of irregularities. Even the EU observers said there were so many irregularities. And the Catholic observers said that there was actually stuffing of boxes, because this man won by 70%, which is a landslide. Then the Mozambican opposition, the Podemos, said we are going to demonstrate, we are going to protest, but these are driven by young people. It's very concerning in Mozambique because of their history, of that violent history. And also, as you know, they're struggling with the jihadists there, so they could just take advantage and the country could explode, which is very worrying for neighboring countries like Malawi, Tanzania, and others, South Africa. Now, all eyes are on Namibia. As I said, it's a busy year in Southern Africa. All eyes are now will turn to Namibia. Later on this month, on the 27th of November, I believe, Namibians will go to the polls. Can SWAPO, that is the Southern Western African People's Organization, the liberation movement, can they survive this upcoming election? SWAPO has ruled Namibia since independence in 1990. But if SWAPO loses, then I think we could confidently say that possibly Zimbabwe will be next. The ZANU-PF will probably be on its way out in Zimbabwe. Malawi will hold its elections next year in September. The Liberation Party of Malawi Congress Party, the MCP, is in power at the moment, having been voted back into power in 2020 after about 26 years hiatus out of power. So what happened is that the MCP ruled Malawi from independence 1964 up to 1994, when Malawians got rid of the one-party state and chose a democratic type of government, and they voted for other political parties. But those political parties were not doing well, and then people reverted back to the MCP, but they're not doing that great as well. So it's most likely that they will be kicked out. So then the political earthquake continues, and we're here to see how it all pans out. But these are interesting times in Southern Africa. We have seen the Sahel region up there in the West Africa, that there are more coup d'etats there which are taking over governments, while in Southern Africa it's actually being driven by the youth. I believe it's a good thing, but the proof is in the pudding. We'll see what this new wave of leaders do. It's one thing to want to be in power. It's another when you're in power to run the government. It's a whole different beast. Anyway, as I said, we're here, and I'll see you next time. Leave your comments below, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.